Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cozy Mystery Mingle. I'm Lissa, and today we have Jennifer Chow with us.
Yay! Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is so awesome. So, is it Jennifer J. Chow or just Jennifer Chow or Jen Chow?
If you want to go to my website, it's Jennifer J. Chow, but otherwise, I don't really care.
Okay. All right. So, fun fact Jennifer Chow, I did a whole spread on millennial cozy mysteries like a couple years ago when that first came out. And she was like one of the original pioneers of millennial cozies.
Yay!
Yeah. So, do you want to just say hi, tell us a little about you and all your books?
Sure. Let's see. I live in the Los Angeles area, so I write cozy mysteries, and I say they're cozy mysteries with hope and heritage in them.
Mhm.
And the last two series I had were set in LA, so the LA Night Market series, and then the Sassy Cat mysteries with a pet groomer who works at a shop called Hollywood. And then this new series, Magical Fortune Cookies, are set in Central California.
Very cool. Yeah. So, we're here to talk about your new release, which is The Ill-Fated Fortune, the Fortune Cookie Mysteries. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that book and what happens?
Sure. Ill-Fated Fortune is sort of the foodie plus mystery book of my heart. So what happens there is I have a mom and daughter, and they work in this enchanted bakery. They make magical pastries, and the pastries bring joy to all their customers. So each member in this family, it's the Jin family, they have like a special signature recipe where they can enchant it, and it brings the happiness to people who eat them. With Felicity, who's my main character, she's taken a while to get her gift going because the generations before her, it was very easily done. And for her, it takes such a long time, and she's almost given up when she stumbles onto a recipe, or she makes a recipe for fortune cookies. And then these are the pastries that actually work and are enchanted for her. So she has pastries that bring joy, but then she discovers that the messages in the fortune cookies that she writes, personalizes for customers, also start coming true. But one of them is an ill-fated fortune. So the man who eats that cookie, eats the cookie, ends up dead. The body is found behind their bakery. And not only that, the message kind of predicts the way he dies. So when the police come by, they're like, wait a minute, what's going on? There's a body behind the bakery. There's a message that's telling like how he died, basically. And so the suspicion is all on Felicity. So she's trying to figure out what really happened. And she can't explain to the police that, she's making magical fortune cookies. And that's the reason why she knows all this. So then, she's trying to figure it all out.
Yeah, and it has such a great name, Gold Bakery. Like, who wouldn't want to go to the Gold Bakery, right? And then, so the Gold Bakery has the gin pastry legend. Do you want to talk more about the legend? And also, like, did you come up with that, or is that something you read, maybe?
Yeah, that I actually came up with that one, and it's actually a short passage of like the origin story for the Jin family, and it was something that my editor actually asked, hey, can you add more backstory? So it was an addition, but it's an addition that I really love to the story because it talks about how, long ago, like in this village, basically there's this drought, and they're running out of food. And the Jin woman in that story, the ancestor, she ends up just making the last of the grains and baking a cake with it. But she doesn't bake it for herself. She bakes it for her mom, who's like really sick. And so basically, the sacrifice that she makes for that mom is seen by the heavens, and then they bless the whole family, and then they all get these magical pastries that are enchanted. So that I think it was a mix of how, there are a lot of stories of sacrifice and how you can respect your elders. And so I brought that into this idea of like, why would these pastries be magical? Like, how could they have started? And so that's what I tried to weave in to the novel.
Very cool. Yeah, I love China has such a deep and rich history. Are there any myths that you were like told growing up or that you like have been a fan of?
Yeah, there are a couple of myths. Like some of them are like, I guess, they're mostly like morality myths in a way because like one of the ones I like is about this. It's a painter, right? And like everything he's like a good person, so everything he paints comes true. And so he paints for the poor people. He helps them like he paints an image and it comes true. Like so he'll paint bread or whatever, and
Mhm.
it'll be like, oh, you can feed people. And then the moral is also that this so one of the greedy rich person comes in and says, hey, paint me this mountain, a mountain of gold. And the painter's like, I don't really want to do that. But then he paints the mountain and he paints the sea, and then the rich person's like, well, I can't get there, so he paints a boat. And so the rich person jumps in the boat, and then tries to go to the mountain, but as they're going to the mountain, the painter paints like a big wave to crest over the boat. And so it's sort of like, okay, you're being greedy, you weren't having the right purpose. So that's kind of a fun one for me. And then of course, so in this book I have this magical rabbit, and
Mhm.
it's who's associated with the moon, because there's a Chinese mythology with the moon. There's a lot of Chinese mythologies with the moon. And
Mhm.
so this one's about the rabbit in the moon that makes the elixir of life. And then another adjacent story is there's the moon goddess in the moon who, and I like, there are different variations of the story, but I like the nice version, which is how, because there's versions where she's greedy, but there's a nice one where um, she, there's like a pill of immortality, and her husband like wants to take it because like he's greedy, like greedy, right? And so, but since she doesn't want him to like live forever, and just you know do evil, she
Mhm.
ends up taking the pill, and then she floats up to the sky into the moon, right? And then she has her companion, the rabbit, in the moon.
Very cool. So what I'm hearing are there are more future paranormal Chinese cozy mysteries you'll be writing.
I had toyed around with like a mythology book where it's like the character, it was like a YA idea where the character goes through like a quest, and then she ends up like having to encounter like different things in mythology and like fight them off and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be good too. So, okay, so magical rabbit. So there's this cute rabbit in the book called Whiskers,
Mhm.
right? And so, will you tell us a little bit more about his magical powers? And does it only work on Felicity, or does it work on anyone?
So Whisker's magical ability, she only connects with Felicity
Mhm.
because I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but there's this magical wish that Felicity makes, and so then the rabbit shows up on the doorstep, and so Whiskers is sort of her magical companion. So
Mhm.
whenever Felicity kind of runs into a wall, she can talk to Whiskers, who's obviously magical. Whiskers does not verbally respond, but there's a power where if you stroke of her, then like a vision shows up in Felicity's mind, and that kind of like help her understand a little bit about how her magic works,
Mhm.
um, and then kind of open more doors into um, even like how she can use her magic later on, I should say. It's a little
Okay.
hint.
And in Chinese mythology, rabbits are just known as calm and peaceful, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And is that kind of Whiskers' personality?
Yeah, I think so. Mostly calm, uh, and wise, generous is another trait I think that's
Mhm.
associated, like especially if you look at the zodiac, Chinese
Oh,
zodiac. So something like that, yeah.
are there any pet rabbits in your house?
Not currently, but I had a rabbit growing up, so we definitely we did have one.
The kids haven't asked for a pet rabbit yet.
No, not yet. Interestingly.
Well, maybe once they read this book, they will want a pet rabbit. So were you born in, do you know what year you were born? The year of the rabbit, the year of the tiger?
Yeah, it was not. I do know rabbit people
Uh-huh.
um, in our family, but I wasn't born in the year of the rabbit.
Oh, okay. So, so let's talk about fortune cookies. Do you actually eat and love fortune cookies?
I do. So all of this sort of started if you say my origin story of this fortune cookie book, it's like when I was a kid, we took a trip up to San Francisco. It's still there. So there's a Golden Gate fortune cookie factory. It's like an alley in San Francisco, Chinatown. And we
Mhm.
took a school field trip there. I don't even remember, but I don't know if we were going just to San Francisco to explore it, but I remember going to the fortune cookie factory, seeing how that it was made, handmade, and then eating those fortune cookies, and they're delicious because they're freshly baked.
Mhm.
And then after that, I think I also collected fortune cookie messages, so I still have like a bunch of fortune cookie messages lying around that inspire me, and that sometimes I slip into my story because one of the characters, Felicity's godmother Alma, she kind of says these things that are like mystical, and
Mhm.
a couple of times I've actually pulled actual fortune cookie messages and I'll put them into like
Nice.
her mouth so she could say it to Felicity or whoever is listening.
That's a good use of the fortune cookie collection. So let's talk about when you do, I don't know about you, but like after the meal, there's always like only one fortune cookie per person. And sometimes I
Mhm.
worry because I'm like, oh, what if I don't like that fortune? I want to open another fortune. Or maybe I just
Mhm.
want more cookies. How many cookies do you have after a meal? 1, 2, 10?
I usually have just the one,
Okay.
so that everyone can, get their fortune and share. But I mean, technically, I could have had as many as I wanted because I grew up. We grew up and we owned a Chinese restaurant, so we had like
Oh,
bags and bags of fortune cookies. But I mean, they were for the restaurant, not me. So I didn't overindulge.
got it. And so I had to read this. So for anyone who doesn't know, the fortune cookie myth is supposedly some people claim you must eat the whole cookie in order for your fortune to come true, or if the fortune is ill-fated, that you cannot eat any of the cookie or the bad fortune will come true. Do you believe that?
I don't, but it's fun to play around with those ideas for book reasons. But yeah, no, not really. And I had a cousin who, so there's another thing where people say like, oh, you can add something to the end of the fortune cookie message, right?
Mhm.
So I had this one cousin who was like, oh, you should be like blah 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 message plus like in bed or
Oh,
something.
yeah, I've
I
heard
was like, okay, come on.
that. That's funny. So the fortune cookie king, it sounds like Charlie Gong, you got your inspiration from going to that fortune cookie factory in San Francisco.
Definitely. And I revisited again because I was like, I want to double check and see. Yeah, and it was still running. Uh, and they had, I mean, they celebrated like it's been a while, so they celebrated their huge anniversary, I think, and then they've been recognized from the city and stuff like that. So it's been nice to see that going.
Hmm,
And we
nice.
also there's another one actually in Oakland
Uh-huh.
that does handmade, and that one is actually a mother and daughter. So I got that one afterwards. I didn't visit, but I ended up getting um, like fortune cookies, custom fortune cookies for my publishing team when my book came out. So that was nice.
So are I know nothing about this.
Mhm.
Do you know, are fortune cookies like a big business? Like, is it very lucrative to have a fortune cookie plant?
Um, I don't know like terms of dollars, but I think it's very concentrated now in the especially in the U.S. Right? It's mostly like it'll be like these plants that obviously are using machines and mass producing them, and then they just ship them to like different places. I do know that the fortune cookie message writing is not as common. Like there's actually few fortune cookie message tellers, I guess, that actually write the messages
Uh-huh.
that they put on the in the for the fortunes. And so that's been interesting. And then there are some, the handcrafted ones, like I said, that are doing it more, whether it's for like special gifts or whether it's
Mhm.
for like different flavors. Because I think a lot of people think of like vanilla, but there's like a lot of different flavors that you can actually
Huh.
put into the fortune cookie. You can make them strawberry, you can make a peach, you can like, dip them in things. You can. So anyway, I think that is interesting as well.
Well, I love the ones that are dipped in chocolate, or I like dipping them myself in chocolate.
Mhm.
Those are my favorite. Do you have a favorite flavor?
So I probably like the traditional vanilla, but
Mhm.
I also appreciate like a little different flavor, like the matcha ones. I think are interesting, and I like eating them as well.
Very cool. So Felicity in our book is a third generation Chinese. Are you the same, or how'd you pick third?
I'm actually second generation, so I thought it was interesting to play around because I think there's the idea of it's like the third generation is an interesting generation because the first one, the immigrants, that's a different story of
Mhm.
like maybe adversity or maybe just like culture adjustment. And then the second one is like you're kind of caught in between. Then the third one is like, okay, you're like American, but then yet you're kind of not, like there's this cultural background and heritage that you have. And so I wanted to play around with this idea of how does she feel, like how is Felicity navigating her identity, and then she's also like not only that she's her identity through just her background, but she's in a small town in Central California named fictional named Pixie, and
Mhm.
so it's a little bit like how is she finding her identity there because she's like surrounded by kind of a monochromatic population, and so how is she
Mhm.
dealing with that, and then also this idea of the Jin legacy, the Jin family legacy. It's like in the name, right? And so it's like, how is she going to continue this tradition when she's not like in China and when she's been here, like the family has been in there for like a couple of generations.
Okay. Yeah, that's very cool. So, do you actually, or does the character, do you speak Mandarin or Cantonese either?
So my family mostly spoke Cantonese growing up. My dad actually knows Mandarin, Cantonese, and Hakka. So, uh,
Wow.
but we ended up speaking a lot of Cantonese in our household. But I'm trying to pick up a little bit Mandarin now.
Hmm. Is it hard or is it easy if you already know Cantonese?
It's tough, like because it's well, some things are similar, so then you can like sort of maybe guess, but then other things are totally different, and then the tones are different as well.
And then do you still practice? Like, do you teach your kids like Cantonese or no? Just English only?
Um, I I practice because I have family who speaks it, but then the kids, like, we tried and we were trying to do all sorts of things, like, so my husband's actually Taiwanese, so then we were, like, trying to do, like, oh, so Taiwanese, and then Cantonese, and then Mandarin, and then for a while, they went to, Chinese school for in
Mhm.
Mandarin, and but it's really, really hard, like, if you're not speaking it at home constantly, and they're not, like,
Oh,
speaking it to their friends. But they're actually using it. I think they're using the Duolingo app now, which is, I
mhm.
mean, better than nothing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's actually a ton of, I saw immersion schools here in San Diego, which I thought was crazy because you see a lot of non-Asian people just so interested in wanting to go to the Mandarin immersion
Oh,
school.
totally. We have Spanish immersion. We have Mandarin immersion. I know this one family who's black, and their like kids like totally speak Mandarin.
Wow. Yeah, we never had that growing up. For me, I'm an older generation. So Gen X, there was like, that wasn't even a thing. I
Yeah,
think that,
we didn't have it too near us, and we barely had the Saturday classes that were like, I think not as fun for my cousins and me.
wait, what are the Saturday classes?
So sometimes they'll have like community classes like on Saturdays that, someone will put out like here we have it in our high school.
Hmm.
Uh, when I was growing up, I don't even know where it was, but it must have been like a community cultural center or something. And we like
Hmm.
go there and I'm sure like they were volunteer teachers or pay very little, you know, but
Well, I don't
yeah.
know. Well, I mean, yeah, now it's like public schools. You can go to the immersion. So
Sure, yeah, of course. And then they start the classes earlier, I think, any language
Mhm.
classes, like whether it's elementary or middle school and on.
Mhm. Oh. Do you do any other Chinese traditional practices? Like, do you guys, the red envelopes for Lunar New Year?
I think we should do that more. uh, I'm surprised that my kids haven't been like clamoring for them, but they definitely get it from like grandparents,
Mm.
and so we definitely do a Lunar New Year like get together because that's a big holiday to come together and have
Hmm.
a meal and just like reconnect. Mid Autumn Festival, not as much, although sometimes we'll like do get moon cakes and
Hmm.
meet up with family a little bit. And then we also do like Qingming a little bit, the tomb sweeping day, where you visit graves and you kind of like clean them and pay respect
Hmm.
to generations that have passed on.
All right, cool. And so, another thing I love that you've done in the book is that Detective Ryland's son is not like the love interest and like the local town yokel. Like, it's a woman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit more about her and her personality and how you created that character.
Yeah, I wanted to have like some sort of detective that's like it's a little bit of a spin-off too, in that she contrasts with Felicity in different ways, but then there's
Mhm.
also similarities that tie them together. So I think Felicity is obviously she's like magical, and it's all about, she's come from that sort of background.
Mhm.
Detective Sun is more like, I'm logical, I'm gonna, take the evidence and see where it leads me, right? Which already inserts like a conflict.
Mhm.
But then there's also like sort of similarity and contrast in their Chinese backgrounds too. And so there's this idea of like, how do they interact? And it's I think they're adversaries, but then they're also kind of not, because Felicity's mom, um, who also talks to the detective, and I think the detective kind of views Felicity's mom as sort of like a surrogate mother to her when her mom passed away too. And so there's this idea of like, they're almost like, you know, sisters from another mother, but like either like they're pitted against each other, but they could also
Mhm.
work well with each other if they like, communicated and connected better.
Very cool. And so, how does she feel about Felicity's amateur sleuthing?
Oh, I mean, like, as a cop, I think she's like no, totally like, no, 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 citizen, right? You should not be involved, and like, why are you doing this? But then, as a person who feels tied to Felicity's mom, I think there are
Mhm.
things where she's a little bit like a little more lenient because of that connection, and just, she's not encouraging Felicity to investigate, but I think there's some things that where she will like let slip, or um, be swayed by this idea of like family. And also she's got a little bit of an outcast, uh, where she works, and so I
Mhm.
think there's something about um, that connection as a woman, and that connection sort of as a, a Chinese American to the Jin family.
Okay, cool. And then the other character who plays a major role is stuck in the friend zone. It sounds like forever, right? So I'm going to ask what everyone's thinking. Is Kevin the Flores just ugly? Like, why is it she's just not interested in this guy at all?
No, I think Calvin's just he's I don't think he's ugly. In fact, I'm like in my head, like I pictured the way he looks, and I think like he's actually like, handsome in my mind. He's but I think sometimes when you just grow up with someone and you've seen them like every day for the longest time, you just like you have blinders on, right? You just don't even see it. So I think Felicity um is kind of stuck in that, like she has not yet figured out like, oh, like what is he now? Like she's just kind of picturing him like, when he was like when they had play dates when they were
Mhm.
younger, right? So if you always picture that person as like a toddler, it's going to be like a totally different vibe than really looking at them as an adult.
But Kelvin is into her, right? He asked her to
Yeah,
prom. He's always around.
he is. And he did go away for college for a little bit, but then he came back, and opened up this floral shop. So he definitely is. And I think he's a very patient man.
Yes. And he opened the florist shop right next door to her family's bakery.
Right. Yeah. It's like the cul-de-sac uh, diversity street of shops, because
Yes.
it's like almost, pause illuminations, almost candles, and then it's the bakery from the gins, and then it's so Kelvin is black and Asian, so then
Mhm.
it's that sort of mix.
Very cool. And so he calls her Lissa. Is that, I
Mhm.
didn't even know that was a nickname. Is that a nickname for the name Felicity?
Yeah, I think yeah, it is a nickname for Felicity. I was trying to think of like Liz, and then I was like, oh, Lissa, that would be cute. And it's like, his nickname for her, so like no one else uses it.
Okay. And so do you have a nickname with your friends like Jenster, Jenmeister, Jenny?
Yeah, I think Jenster, I've only heard a couple times.
Okay.
Jen Meister, I don't think I've usually heard.
It's a new one. I'm going to give you the nickname Jen Meister. So do you have a favorite one? Or you just are totally fine with whatever?
I'm usually fine with whatever. I mean, as long as it's not
Okay.
like totally, totally off. Don't call me by a totally different name.
Well, it's funny. So my college roommate is named Jennifer. And so I remember someone called, and because in high school she went by the name Jenny. And this is because I'm old. We had one landline. And so someone was like, is Jenny there? I'm like, there's no Jenny here. I was like, I didn't even click. Yeah, I was like, we have a Jennifer, but there's no Jenny. So I hung up on them, and then they called again. And I was like, you have the wrong number.
Like, stop bothering us. That's so
Yeah,
funny.
it sounds so different, Jenny. But anyways, okay. So you have made up this fictional town, Pixie, California, which is kind of like Fresno, right?
Well, it's like the small town right next to Fresno, so that you can pop into the city when you want.
All right. So what do you love about this town? Like, what makes it kind of different from all of the other small towns that you've created?
So actually, this one is like a true small town, whereas, like in my other mysteries, it's kind of like in the urban area, but it's like a community in the urban area, or a neighborhood in the urban area, or a night market in the urban area. But this one is truly like a small town where people like have their pride in the town. Like there's a little bit of a like divide between Pixie and Fresno, and they're kind of like not quite rivals, but a little bit of that attitude, like, oh, you're from Fresno, or oh, you're from Pixie. And then I think there's just the small town atmosphere of like, we can access the gossip network, or this is a place where people leave the doors unlocked, so there's that community feel of like, this is a nice place, until of course, like a murder kind of shows up in their town.
Right. And so, well, you're from California. I'm not from here. Did you ever grow up? Are you like a surfer? Do you like hiking? Are you like an outdoorsy beach person?
I do like hiking a lot. Not like super long. Like I don't do backpacking hikes or like hikes where like I need an extra permit to like get out there. But I enjoy like being out in the nature. And then I actually live pretty close to the beach, so we can always go there and hang out at the beach. And I do find the beach very calming. Like Fresno is landlocked, and so when we went on vacations as a kid, sometimes we would go to like the beach or like those places, and then it was always so like amazing to me that, oh, there's like the ocean there, and you've got this golden sand. And so I do really like the beach as well, because I find it very calming. I just don't like the extra sand that gets as a mom, I don't like the extra sand that gets like everywhere.
Got it. All right. Very cool. So because if you were from like Central Cal, you could have lived in Northern California and San Francisco, and it sounds like you made trips there, or you could have lived in Southern. Like, how did you choose? Did you choose it based on personality or?
I don't think I'm a person like either way. What am I find? I actually, so for a little bit, I actually worked up in the Bay Area because I was working in a nonprofit there, and I thought it's a nice area, and I thought maybe I was one of the few nonprofit people, because a lot of people worked obviously in tech and in Silicon Valley, and so, but I also like that area too, and I actually thought of potentially living there, but I came down to LA for a grad school program here, and so then I ended up just staying, and I really like the place where I'm living and the community here, and of course the access to like lots of different things, whether it's scenery, whether it's mountains to beaches, or whether it's just like the different experiences you can get. Like you can get shows, or like the museums, and then the food is spoiled by like just a plethora of food options that are available in the LA area.
Okay. Yeah, they do have great food. So, I guess the main character then, Felicity, how much is she kind of like you? Is she a mini Jen, or totally different from your personality?
Mm. I would say like each of my characters had a little bit of something in me, right? So I think Felicity was me like earlier when I was trying to figure out like what do I want to do? Who am I going to be? And so I think she struggles with that a lot, because she's been in the same place in this small town, and she's kind of there because she wants to help her mom, but she's also there trying to like figure out who she is, how she fits into her family when for so long she hasn't had this magical ability. And even actually when she gets her magical ability, it's not like totally easy street for her. She's
Mhm.
like trying to figure like how does it really work and what can I do with it, and you know, is there a way to really take on the legacy, but then also kind of make my own twist on it as well. So yeah, I think it will probably be a little bit me as I figure out um, what I want to do, and then also a little bit of me, and maybe this is still ongoing. Like, what is my identity? Like, how do I? Because there's always that straddling for me of like, you know, how American am I? How Chinese am I? What does that mean to be Chinese American? Like, is that a third, you know, culture that's separate? So yeah, that's always like I think a ongoing like identity kind of diving that I do.
Very cool. And so, what do you love about Felicity, and what do you kind of like thinking might change or grow or do
Yeah,
different?
I hope I'm hoping that she gets more confident as time goes on, because I think that's a big struggle for her, like kind of doubting herself, and also like being a little bit swayed by expectations or things around her, and she does get stressed about like how do I uphold um, different obligations, I guess,
Mhm.
whether that's to her mom or whether that's to her ancestry or so I feel like I definitely want her to grow more, be confident. I'd like her to be, yeah, I would like her to also be open to the possibility of love. That's a little bit of a hint. Um, and yeah, I just sometimes it's just organic too to see where the character wants to go.
All right. And well, what are your thoughts now? You've written contemporary, you've written paranormal cozies. Do you feel like you just gravitate more towards one or the other, or do you just love them both equally?
I don't know. I think I just love them both. Like it's just interesting to explore just different facets, because with the Magical Fortune Cookie series, it's like I get to do two worlds, which I think is interesting because I have the magical world in the system, and then I have like the contemporary world in the system, and then you can play around with like a lot of different things that are stretching like creativity and imagination.
Mhm.
With the contemporary, like it's always nice to like pull things, and I do this with I think many most of yeah, I think all the mysteries actually, but like have like real places that are like in there that I reference, and so I do like to like, even though it's like a usually a fictional town or community, I do like to pull in from real things. So I'll have like real restaurants they go to or real landmarks. Like for Ill Fated Fortune, which is the first book in the Magical Fortune Cookie series, I have these underground gardens that actually exist in Fresno.
Mhm.
So it's because it's so hot that they actually made these gardens where you go down the staircase and they're like tunnels, and each have like different rooms and different plants in them. And so I like to pull things like that. Um, but I would say that one time I had a reader fan come up to me at a conference, and they're like, I really wanted to go to this restaurant in your book. And then it was like roti. They serve roti. And then she's like, and it wasn't there. I looked for it and it was not there. So I felt kind of bad.
I mean, maybe you have a second career, like doing restaurant descriptions and blog
Yeah,
write ups.
right. I'll just think of the names and the ideas. You just pop up with the, the
Yeah.
food stand
I mean, I love
restaurant.
the name Pixie, California. That sounds like a place I would want to live.
Mhm.
So what are your writing plans then for 2024?
So I have the second book in the series. It's gonna come out next year. So I'm editing that, and that's so that will take place at a wedding. It's where Felicity's asked to cater a wedding, and she's asked to cater the cake, but the cake isn't a traditional cake. It's a cake made of egg tarts. So there'll be like tiers of egg tarts,
Mhm.
um, and then but then there's the murder, which is like the dead body under the cake table, and so it's going to be titled Star-Crossed Egg Tarts.
Cute. All right. And the other series, are those all done for right now?
Yeah, they're on pause, but if you want to tell my publisher you want more, feel free to
Okay.
contact them. Oh, and the other thing is, I'm actually part of a nonfiction book that's coming out. It's called Writing the Cozy Mystery.
Oh.
I'm not quite sure. I think it might be this fall that it comes out, but it sort of depends on the publishing process. But it's where a bunch of cozy mystery writers we wrote essays on different aspects of the cozy mystery and how to like incorporate these elements into writing a cozy mystery.
Very cool. And then where can readers find you? Are you doing any book tours or just all online this year?
I am. I think I have one more event here in Southern California, which is this Saturday. If you're
Okay.
near Pasadena, it's an Octavia's bookshelf, and it will be a conversation with Iris Yamashita at 6 p.m. in the evening. And so for sure you can find me there. And then I will be going to Left Coast Crime. That's going to be in Seattle this year. So that's in
Mhm.
April. And so if you're going to that conference, I will definitely be there. And online, I probably have some more things I can't remember, but you can always find it on my website. It's jenniferjchow.com. There's a tab that says events. And so I try to keep that updated so that people know what I'm doing and where I am. And yeah. Oh,
And
you can
past
find me.
pres- oh, go on.
Oh, sorry. You can also find me on social media. So I'll post on I have a Facebook author page and Instagram.
And as past president of Sync, you'll be at BoucherCon again next year, right?
As as immediate press, you mean this coming year?
Yeah, I guess.
Technically,
Is it 20? Yeah, 2024.
yeah. Technically, I don't have to be because the president. What happens that we have a little ceremony there where the president is passes on the mantle to the
Mhm.
vice president. So they're like the key figures. As immediate past president, it's like, okay, what are you? You've done your duty.
Okay.
You don't have to be there. But I tend to go to conferences to support Sisters in Crime and also like to be there, like especially like Left Coast Crime because Hot Pot Murder, which is book 2 in my Night Market series, was nominated for a Lefty. So definitely going to be there. And then I will be at the Eggers banquet this year because Hot Pot Murder was also nominated for the Lillian Jackson Braun Award. And so those things I will definitely be at for sure. And then I'm planning on being at Ashland Mystery Fest in Oregon as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, I forgot about that. It's a reader event, right?
Yes, it's a reader event, and it's usually like an interactive events all around town. And they had like a mystery last year where you went all around town to like pick up the clues and like figure out the mystery.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on today and sharing information about your book and yourself and everything else.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much for hosting and inviting me to do this.
Yeah. And if you want to find Jennifer, I will leave links to all of those in the description or